The autumn sun rose behind the pine-covered mountains of Montana, leaving a reddish glow through the stained glass windows of Maggie's place, an old diner on the side of the main road that everyone in town considered a second home. Emma Sanders, 42, adjusted her faded white apron, her hands quickly rearranging the knives on the table, while her eyes occasionally glanced at the clock on the wall. It was almost 6 p.m., a time that usually increased after a long day. The yellow light fell on her gentle face, reflecting the tiredness of a woman who was all too familiar with the daily worries of paying rent and raising her little daughter, Lily, who was only 10 years old. Every time she stepped through the door of this diner, Emma had to force herself to be strong, to wake up for her child. Maggie's place was not just a diner, but the last place that had supported her and her daughter since her husband, a firefighter, had died in a fire 5 years ago. To strangers, the restaurant was just a place to stop for a bite to eat before the long, winding roads of Montana. But to Emma, it was a place of hope, the only place she could cling to. The wind chime at the door of the tavern rang out a familiar sound that, every time Emma heard it, she was intoxicated with a gentle smile, ready to welcome customers. But this time, when she looked up, Emma paused. A man walked in, tall and stylish, wearing a simple shirt and his faded jeans. His hat was lowered, half his face hidden, but those eyes, that demeanor, she recognized immediately. Clint Eastwood. Unmistakable. Unmistakable. In that moment of recovery, the space seemed to freeze. The coffee cup that a customer was holding up also stopped in midair, and the care stories around the purification stopped. Emma felt her heart pounding. She was not the type to care about Hollywood stars, whose lives were too busy to daydream. But Clint Eastwood was different from anyone else. If you love engaging, dramatic stories and thrilling cases, don't forget to subscribe to the channel today. Each video is a journey full of surprises, taking you into the world of unsolved mysteries. Join me in exploring, analyzing, and feeling every detail of the story. He was an icon, someone her father had looked up to as a role model during his quiet childhood. Remembering the winter evenings when her father, a carpenter with calloused hands, pulled her into his arms, turned on the old TV and watched the good, the bad, and the ugly. He used to say, "Daughter, there are people in this world who speak little, but their actions echo forever." And now, that man was sitting in the corner of the small shop, where the deep afternoon sunlight through the glass door highlighted the wrinkles of history displayed on his face after so many years. Emma rushed forward, her gun tightly holding the order book, taking a deep breath to calm herself. "He's just a man like everyone else," she gasped, but her heart still pounded as if it was about to jump from the punch. She approached his table, smiling the gentle smile she reserved for strangers. "Good evening. What would you like?" Clint raised his head, his deep gray eyes filled with stories that no one could fathom. He smiled gently, a gentle smile that made Emma's heart flutter. "A black coffee and a burger, no action." His deep voice, both familiar and strange, seemed to come from an old movie. Emma quickly wrote down the order, but when she turned away, Clint's voice was dry, gentle, and full of concern. "The place is quiet today, isn't it?" She paused, turning back to him, a little surprised. Not everyone talked to the waiter, especially famous hotels. "Yes, it's not very crowded today." She smiled, her eyes revealing a mixture of sadness. "But it's nice to be quiet. Give me some time to judge." Clint nodded gently, as if he understood her every word. "Have you been here long?" Emma blinked, not expecting him to ask that. "Almost 5 years." Her voice softened. Since my husband died." A moment of silence passed. Clint looked at her, his eyes softening, as if understanding something deep. "Life isn't easy, is it?" Emma laughed, nodding in response, her eyes shining with a sadness she had suppressed. She turned back to the counter, her heart still in her throat. Clint's words seemed to stir up the pain she thought she had buried, but it was also that look, that question, that made her feel something that no one had given her for a long time, a genuine concern. When he brought out the food, Clint nodded slightly in thanks. Emma stood there for a few seconds, as if she wanted to say something, but then stopped. Returning to the counter, she stole a glance at him. Unlike what she had imagined, he ate very leisurely, slowly, as if enjoying the atmosphere of this small town. The warm yellow light inside Maggie's place still radiated the same peacefulness as usual, but in Emma Sanders's heart, everything seemed to be shaking. She kept glancing toward the corner of the restaurant where Clint Eastwood was sitting, as if afraid that if she looked away, he would disappear like a dream. But no, there he was, the man she had admired with her father in old cowboy movies, now sitting in front of her, sipping hot coffee, as quiet as if the world outside didn't exist. Holding the coffee pot in her hand, Emma took a deep breath to calm herself before walking over to his table. "More coffee, Mr. Eastwood?" she asked, her voice soft, trying to smile naturally. Clint looked up, his gray eyes silently watching her, then nodded slowly. "Thank you, and just call me Clint." Emma paused for a moment, her heart suddenly beating faster. Was someone like him, so simple and humble? "Yes, Clint," she smiled, pouring more coffee into the white porcelain cup. She turned to leave, but then seemed to reconsider, stopping, glancing over her shoulder. "I must say, you are the most special customer we've ever had," Clint chuckled, a rare but warm laugh that made Emma feel as light-hearted as if she had just been complimented. "Special? I'm just an old man passing through town," he replied, his eyes keen, as if he could read her very being. Emma tilted her head, her eyes gleaming with mischief and sincerity. "You might think so, but I bet you can't walk into a place without being recognized." Clint smiled, bowing his head in acknowledgement. "Maybe you're right, but sometimes you just want to be treated like everyone else. Sit back, drink your coffee, and watch the world go by." Emma nodded, understanding the feeling better than anyone. "I think I do. There are days when I wish I could disappear from view too, but being a single mother isn't easy." Clint looked at her more closely, his gaze no longer polite, but understanding. "You have children?" "A girl, Lily, 10. She's my world." She was embarrassed to say it, but Clint nodded respectfully. "You're strong." "I don't always feel that way," Emma whispered, her voice breaking a little. Clint looked at her for a long moment. "The strongest people are the ones who never say they're strong." The words hit Emma hard because they were so true. She smiled, wiping her hands on her apron as if to dispel the emotions that were rising. "Where are you going through this little town?" Clint looked out the window, the orange sunset covering the thin wisps of smoke from his coffee. "I like driving through places like this, towns where life still feels a little like it used to be. Maybe to find some peace, or maybe to remember a time when I lived." Emma was silent, not wanting to break that train of thought. "You remind me of someone," Clint said, his voice low, his eyes lost in a distant memory. "Who?" Emma blurted out, then regretted what might have been a personal question, but Clint just smiled, not in annoyance, but as if talking to himself. "A woman I knew, a long time ago. She had sad eyes like yours, but full of determination." Emma didn't know how to respond. Part of her heart was touched by the comment, but part of her felt like it was fate, as if Clint had come here not just to stop by, but to see her. "Sometimes," Clint continued, looking up at her, "people don't come into each other's lives by accident." Emma squeezed the order book in her hand, her heart suddenly feeling warm in the cold winter days. Then he smiled, a rare smile that Emma knew she would remember forever. "Thank you for talking. You have no idea how much that means to a wandering old man like me." Emma smiled softly, her eyes shining with an emotion she couldn't name. "And thank you for making me feel seen. Sometimes just that is enough to keep me going tomorrow." As she walked away to continue her work, Clint watched her for a moment longer. The small but strong figure of the woman seemed to reflect something he had been searching for all this time, and as Emma continued to clear the tables, she had no idea that this seemingly ordinary encounter would be the wind that changed her fate. When he left, he would leave behind a gift she never expected. The Montana sunset had completely faded, giving way to the quiet darkness of the countryside. From the windows of the diner, the street lights cast dim streaks of light, making Emma Sanders feel even more the loneliness that surrounded her every day. The shop was gradually emptying, The last customers were finishing their cups of coffee, talking about their families, about the upcoming hunt. Everything seemed peaceful, but in Emma's heart, it was not. Because that special man Clint Eastwood had just stood up, leaving the table clean, the coffee cup with a few drops left, and something she had not expected. On the table where Clint sat, in addition to a few change for a simple meal, there was a neatly folded piece of paper. Emma looked around, hoping to see him somewhere, but the door was closed and the wind chime at the entrance had long since fallen silent. Her hand shook slightly as she picked up the paper, sensing something serious hidden in those small folds. But the shop was still busy, and Emma, with a habit of responsibility ingrained in her, tucked the paper into her apron pocket and continued working. "Emma, you look strange today. Are you tired?" The voice of Mrs. Shirley, one of the long-time customers, came from the corner of the shop. Emma smiled, forced. "Yes, just a long day, Miss Shirley." The old woman nodded, her eyes gentle. "Yes, do your best, my child. Not everyone is as strong as you." That sentence, unintentionally, made Emma's heart clench, remembering the days of struggling with the bills alone, of taking Lily to school without enough money to pay the full tuition. Finally, when the clock pointed to nearly 9 p.m., the shop was quiet. Only she was left. Emma took off her apron, sat down on the familiar chair at the corner of the counter, quietly pulled out a piece of paper from her pocket. She opened it, and when the first lines hit her eyes, emotions surged like waves in her chest. "Emma, I don't know who you are other than what I saw tonight, but that's enough for me to know that you are special. I've been to many places, met many people, but it's been a long time since I've seen someone like you. A woman who struggles against life, but still maintains kindness, resilience in her eyes. You remind me of someone who once taught me, not everyone is born lucky, but everyone deserves a chance. So, I leave you a small thing, hoping it can help you and Lily have a little more peace. Don't refuse, don't doubt this kindness. The world is harsh enough. Good people should help good people." Went. Emma sat there, her eyes stinging. The simple words seemed to reveal everything she had been trying to hide. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the fear of what tomorrow would bring. But that wasn't all. Tucked inside the note was a check. At first, she thought it was a few $100s, a big tip, the kind long-haul drivers sometimes left when they felt sorry for her. But when she saw the number, her hands shook. $50,000. $50,000. An unimaginable sum. Emma leaned back in her chair, covering her mouth with her hand, tears falling silently, not because she was greedy for money, but because for the first time in years, she felt seen. Someone who recognized the tireless effort she had put in to raise Lily, to survive the loss and pain. "God," she whispered. Her hand clutched the check as if afraid it would disappear. She remembered the times she had to lie to Lily, saying, "I'm fine," when she had only a few coins left in her pocket. She remembered the winter nights when they had wrapped themselves in blankets and laid together in the cold house because they couldn't afford to fix the heater. And now, someone, Clint Eastwood, a legend, a stranger who understood people's feelings, had reached out to help her. Emma sat there for a long time, not knowing how long it had been. Outside, the wind blew through the trees, rustling softly. Something warm and hopeful was growing inside her. The next morning, when Lily woke up and ran into the kitchen, Emma was still sitting at the table, clutching the check like a treasure. "Mommy, did you forget to sleep?" she asked, her arms wrapped around the old worn teddy bear. Emma smiled, pulling her child into her arms, feeling relieved for the first time in months. "It's okay. I just had a good dream." And Emma knew that from this day forward, her life and her daughter's would be different, thanks to a stranger, but the first person in years who believed that she deserved something good. The early autumn sunlight filtered through the old curtains, casting warm streaks of light on the worn kitchen floor of the small house where Emma Sanders lived with her daughter. But today, even though the sun was high in the sky, Emma sat still at the scratched wooden table, clutching the $50,000 check as if she let go, it would disappear like a dream. In the next room, Lily's clear voice chattered to the kitten they had just picked up from the street. "Mommy, look at me brushing Maxie." Emma smiled weakly, but her heart was like a tidal wave. Why her? That question had been echoing in Emma's mind since last night. Why would someone like Clint Eastwood, someone famous and wealthy, choose to help a waitress like her, someone the rest of the town sometimes didn't even care about? Emma stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dirt road that led into the pine forest behind her house. Outside, orange leaves were falling slowly in the autumn wind, and she thought of her husband, David, who had promised to always be there for her and her children, even though he couldn't keep his word anymore. "If you were alive, you would know why. But I don't," Emma whispered to the void, tears streaming down her cheeks. She remembered the early days after David died, the days when the refrigerator was nearly empty, the bills were piling up, and Lily was too young to understand why her father never came home. The nights when she sat at the kitchen table, wiping away tears as she counted the coins, trying to figure out how to buy enough milk for her baby, or pay the electricity bill before it was cut off. She also remembered the times Lily asked, "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy come back to me?" And she had to grit her teeth, force a smile, wipe away her tears and lie, "Daddy is far away, but he's always watching over me." Now, looking at the check in her hand, Emma couldn't help but wonder, do I deserve this? She felt like she was holding a fortune, but at the same time, she felt as heavy as a mountain of pressure. What if I use it wrong? What if I screw up this one chance? The phone rang, pulling her out of her thoughts. "Hello?" Her best friend Tasha's voice rang out as cheerfully as ever. "Emma? You didn't call back last night. Is everything okay? You seemed stressed." Emma bit her lip, hesitating. "I have something. You wouldn't believe it." And then, like a burst of emotion, Emma told her everything. The meeting with Clint, the note, the check, and the feelings she was carrying. On the other end of the line, Tasha was silent for a few seconds, then said softly, "Emma, if you're asking why you, I'll tell you. Because you're the most deserving person I've ever known. You're a mother who does everything for her daughter. You don't give up no matter how much life throws at you. And Clint, he sees that. Something you never saw in yourself." Emma choked up, tears welling up in her eyes again. "But Lily, I'm afraid I'll do it wrong. I'm afraid I'll waste this gift." Tasha's voice was soft but firm. "You're not a person who wastes opportunities, Emma. I know you, and maybe this is a way for you to start over, not just for me, but for Lily." Emma sat down at the table staring at the check. Thoughts of the future began to become clearer. She could pay off her debts, fix up the old house, give Lily a safe place to live, maybe even reopen the pastry shop her mother had dreamed of, something she had to give up after David left, and most of all, give Lily the life she had always dreamed of for her daughter. Emma sighed, gently smoothing out Clint's note. The last sentence kept ringing in her head. The world is too cruel. Good people should help good people. Perhaps for the first time in many years, Emma found herself included in the two words, good people, that Clint had mentioned. She stood up, walked over to Lily, who was sitting and playing with Maxie by the window. "Honey, come here for a moment." Lily ran over, her innocent eyes looking up at her mother. "Mommy has something to tell you." Emma hugged her daughter tightly, kissing her soft hair. "Mommy promises, from now on things will be different. Mom will do everything to give you a better life." Lily innocently asked back, "Really, Mom? We won't have to worry anymore?" Emma smiled, for the first time without fear. "Yes, I promise." And in that moment, Emma understood something important. Perhaps Clint Eastwood had appeared in her life as a miracle that life owed her for so long. A miracle of strangers arriving at the right time to pull someone out of the abyss. Emma did not know what the next step would be, but now she had faith. Faith in herself, in the future, and in the kindness of people. The fragile morning sunlight filtered through the yellow leaves of autumn, shining down on the red dirt road leading to the small house where Emma Sanders and little Lily lived. Today the sky was strangely clear, like Emma's mood. For the first time in many years, she felt something like hope in her heart. But because of that, the anxiety weighed on her even more. The $50,000 check, an unexpected gift from Clint Eastwood, was still in the old tin box, along with the letter she'd read over and over again until the pages were worn out. And every time she looked at it, Emma felt the trust he had placed in her. But deciding what to do with the money was a big struggle. She was afraid of doing the wrong thing. That morning, as Lily was eating a simple breakfast of bread and jam, Emma sat quietly with a steaming cup of coffee. Tasha, her best friend, appeared like a cool breeze, pushing open the door with a bright smile. "Emma, what are you planning to do today? Or are you just sitting there thinking about nothing?" Emma smiled faintly, but her eyes were still full of thoughts. "I don't know, Tasha. Part of me wants to use this money to pay off my debts, buy a new car, fix up the house. But part of me, I want to do something bigger." Tasha pulled up a chair and sat down, her eyes more serious. "Emma, this is the first time in many years that you have the opportunity to do something for yourself and Lily. You have lived for too long for others. The question is, if you were no longer afraid, what would you do?" That question made Emma pause. If she were no longer afraid, what would she do? Memories flooded back like a slow-motion movie, and she remembered the small bakery her mother had dreamed of reopening before she died. "My mother used to tell me that in this life, there are gifts that come like miracles, and if you're brave enough to grasp them, you'll find your way." Emma whispered those words, suddenly filled with a strange feeling, the desire to live for yourself. Tasha took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Emma, if you want to reopen your mother's bakery, now's the time." Emma looked at her friend, her eyes watering but shining with an unprecedented light. "You mean I can really do it?" "Yes, Clint Eastwood believed in you. Why don't you believe in yourself?" That afternoon, for the first time in years, Emma drove her old car to the center of town, stopping in front of the small shop that had been dusty for years, where her mother used to sell the sweetest cakes in town. The sign that read Sanders Bakery was old, the letters faded with time, but to Emma it was a symbol of family, of the past, and of hope for the future. She got out of the car, stood still in front of the wooden door, her hand shaking as she touched the sign. "Mom, if you were here, you would know how scared I am, but this time I won't run away." Emma spent the afternoon jotting down ideas in a small notebook. A list of pastries her mother had made, cinnamon apple pie, honey milk biscuits, a list of things to do, fix up the shop, buy ingredients, find a painter to repaint the sign. And at the top, she wrote in large italicized letters, "For Lily, for Mom, and for myself." That night, as Lily sat doing her homework, Emma sat across from her daughter, telling her for the first time about her mother's dream and the bakery. "Mom, if you open a bakery, will you help me?" Lily exclaimed, her eyes shining. Emma laughed, tears streaming down her face. "Of course, honey. You'll be my first cookie." But then Emma suddenly remembered what she had always feared. What if I fail? She looked at Clint's letter on the table again, and the words echoed loudly. "Don't refuse. Don't doubt this kindness. The world is harsh enough. Good people should help good people." And she understood that this gift was not for her to continue to fear, but to give her a chance to stand up. The next morning, with determination, Emma went to the bank. The bank teller, a middle-aged man, looked at the number on the check, and then looked at her with surprise. "Are you sure you want to deposit it into the account today?" Emma took a deep breath, her eyes shining. "Yes, and I want to withdraw a portion to start over. I want to reopen my mother's bakery." He smiled and nodded sympathetically. "That's a good start, Miss Sanders." Back home, Emma held Lily in her arms and whispered to her, "We're going to start over, baby, and this time, everything will be different." In the simple house, where anxiety once filled the air, now, for the first time in years, there was laughter, voices, and promises of a better future. Emma knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but now she had faith, a plan, and above all, a reason to keep going. The Montana winter was approaching, The cold winds carrying the scent of snow whipped into her face as if to test her will. But in Emma Sanders' heart, the flame of hope was burning more fiercely than ever. Sanders Bakery, once her mother's dream and a part of her happy childhood memories, was now reborn, under her determined hands. From a single mother who struggled on a meager salary, Emma was now embarking on a completely new path. Becoming a bakery owner, Emma set about renovating the shop with the money she had taken from Clint Eastwood's check. The walls were peeling, the roof was leaking, and the windows were broken. Every detail reminded her that this dream would not be easy. "Do you think we'll be open soon, Mom?" Lily asked, her eyes wide as she looked at the wreckage. Emma smiled and patted her daughter's head. "It might take longer than I thought, but I promise you, we'll get it." The first day she hired the repair crew, Emma spent the entire afternoon discussing prices, planning the repairs, and buying new furniture. She had never done anything like this before. She had only ever served customers, cleaned tables, and saved every penny. But now, she was standing in the middle of a pile of invoices, price lists, estimates, and questions from contractors that made her feel like she was about to lose her breath. "Do you want to refloor the wood floor or tile? Either one will cost more. What color paint? Do you want to make a new bakery or reuse it?" Emma clutched the small notebook tightly, the numbers dancing before her eyes. At night, when Lily was fast asleep, Emma sat at the kitchen table, looking at the invoices, her eyes dark with fatigue. She remembered what Clint had written: "The world is cruel enough. Good people should help good people." Emma whispered to herself, as if reminding herself, "He believes in me, so I can't give up." During the day, Emma spent most of her time at the shop, overseeing the renovations. In the evening, she spent time learning how to manage finances, reading books about starting a small business, and even looking for free online courses on how to run a bakery, how to price cakes reasonably, how to source good ingredients that aren't too expensive, how to attract repeat customers in a small town where everyone knows each other. Those questions kept her up many nights, but every time she felt tired, she would look at the small family photo, her, David, and Lily, the happy smile that she now had to preserve for her daughter. One morning, Emma decided to try making her mother's old apple pie recipe, the one her mother used to make every fall. The small kitchen was filled with the scent of cinnamon, apples, and melted butter, making Emma tear up. When the pie was baked, golden brown, filling the room, Lily ran in, her eyes shining. "Mommy, just like Grandma used to make." Emma laughed, tears welling up in her eyes. "Yes, honey, I want to bring that flavor back." The day Emma invited her old friends, neighbors, and even Miss Shirley, the oldest customer in the restaurant, to try the cake, she was so nervous that her hands shook as she cut the first piece. But when she tasted it, Mrs. Shirley put down her fork and looked at Emma with emotion. "Emma, this is the best apple pie I've had since your mother died. You bring back memories, my daughter." Emma held her breath, then smiled, feeling like a part of her mother was coming back to life in that cake. From the first compliments, Emma began to believe that she could really do it. She came up with the idea for Sanders Bakery to be not just a place to sell cakes, but a place where everyone in town could feel the warmth of family, long wooden tables for everyone to sit together, comfortable chairs by the window for those who wanted to sit and sip cake and coffee, watching the small street. Walls hung with pictures of her mother, of the old days, so that everyone could see that each cake here had a story. And in particular, Emma dedicated a small corner to write the words, "For those who need a place to lean on, come here, and know that you are not alone." The work was still in disarray, there were still dozens of bills and plans to complete, but for the first time Emma felt like she was living, not just existing, and in her mind Clint's words still rang like a compass. Good people should help good people. Emma told herself, one day, like him, I will help someone like that. As the first snowflakes of the season began to fall sparsely on the roof of the Sanders Bakery, Emma Sanders stood in front of the brand new glass door of the shop, filled with emotions she never thought she would feel: pride, happiness, and gratitude. The bakery was now complete, wearing a cozy appearance, with the aroma of baked goods and cinnamon spreading throughout the space. Outside the window, small yellow lights hang along the porch, like twinkling stars in the cold winter night. Emma not only rebuilt her mother's bakery, she also built a warm home, a place for lost souls to return to. On the opening day, Emma invited everyone in town, from lonely old men and women, struggling families, to old friends she used to serve at the diner. Everyone was surprised and moved when they entered the bakery. Her mother's old photos, the words hanging on the wall, "We bake from stories, from sweet memories. If you need a place to feel like you belong, sit down and tell me your story." Emma understood that this bakery was not just about selling cakes, but about giving kindness, like Clint Eastwood had given her. Soon after the shop opened, Emma set aside a small box by the counter with the words, "Bread of Love Fund. Buy someone a piece of cake and coffee tomorrow." And miraculously, people in the town started to put money in it. Some days customers silently put in $5, $10. One day someone left a note, "For a single mother like me who needs a peaceful day." One widower even put in a note, "For someone who is lonely this coming Christmas." One woman put in a note, "For someone who is lonely this coming Christmas." Scott said, Emma used the money to send cakes and coffee to the poor, to students who couldn't afford breakfast. She remembered the feeling of receiving a gift from Clint, and now she wanted someone else to feel that love. One day, when it was snowing heavily, Emma saw a young woman walking into the shop with a baby. The girl was thin, wearing an old coat, her face tired and worried. Emma immediately recognized the image of herself, a single mother, standing there with empty hands. "Excuse me, I just wanted to ask, is there room for you and your daughter to sit here? I don't have enough money to buy cake." Emma smiled, pulling out chairs for them to sit down. "There's always room here for those who need a seat and some warmth." She turned to the counter, preparing 2 servings of hot apple pie, along with 2 glasses of milk. When she put them on the table, she whispered, "Today, someone paid in advance for you and your daughter." The young woman was stunned, tears welling up, looking at Emma without saying a word. Emma took the girl's hand, her eyes full of understanding. "I used to be you, and someone used to help me. Now I just do the same thing." Little daughter Lily, now no longer a little girl who suffered from poverty, but the little owner of the bakery, always busy helping her mother wipe the table, bringing out cakes for customers. One evening, while cleaning, Lily asked her mother, "Mom, why don't you take money from people who don't have enough money?" Emma smiled, hugging her daughter. "Because I was once someone who didn't have enough money, honey, and I know how that feels. If we can help someone, we should, right?" Lily nodded, her eyes sparkling as if she understood the first great lesson of kindness. Tasha, Emma's best friend, was always by her side. Whenever Emma was shaken by difficulties, Tasha reminded her, "Emma, don't forget why you started." One day, when Emma was exhausted, Tasha sat next to her, comforting her. "You're not alone anymore. This whole town is behind you, just like Clint was behind you that first day." News of the Bakery of Kindness quickly spread throughout the town. Strangers from far away came just to taste the famous apple pie and leave a few notes, thanking her for finding a place of peace in the stormy life. And every time someone asked about her inspiration, Emma would tell them about Clint Eastwood, who planted the seeds of love in her life. That night, as she closed the shop, looking at the warm yellow light shining through the glass windows, Emma stood at the counter, holding a hot cup of coffee, thinking about Clint. "I wonder if you know that your gift has not only saved my life, but also saved the lives of the people I have met." Emma smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Clint. One day, I will tell you about the miracles you created here." One late winter afternoon, as the delicate snowflakes gently fell on the awning of Sanders' bakery, Emma Sanders sat quietly at the old wooden table by the window. Outside, the small town was as quiet as ever, but inside Emma was a turmoil of emotions that were hard to describe. The bakery was now more than just a store. It was the heart of the community. The familiar guests have now become friends. The stories shared, the tears and smiles have all found shelter over cups of coffee and hot cakes. And Emma herself, the woman who once bowed her head and endured life, has now stood firmly on her own 2 feet. and even become a support for others. Next to the steaming cup of tea is the pure white card that Emma is writing, a letter that she has wanted to write for a long time, but only today has she had the courage to complete it. Dear Mr. Clint Eastwood, I don't know if this letter will ever reach you, but I need to write it because I owe you something that I probably can't express in words in my entire life. I used to think that miracles only existed in fairy tales. I used to think that people like me, a single mother struggling to get by, would never receive anything good from this world. But then you came into my life unexpectedly and changed everything. You probably don't remember me, the waitress in the little diner in the quiet Montana town. But I'll never forget that day, the day a great man with eyes full of life experience looked at me, really looked at me, as a human being worthy of love and appreciation. He left me not just a check, but a message that I had value, that I could stand up, that I could give my daughter a better life. And I did, sir. I reopened the bakery my mother dreamed of, a place where pies weren't just for eating, but for telling stories. I turned it into a place where lonely people, broken-hearted people, could find comfort. We helped a lot of people, people like me, like I used to be, mothers who didn't know how to feed their children, old people who lived alone, young people who thought they had given up on everything. Every time I see them smile, I think of you, of your act of kindness, of the heart you showed to a stranger. You know, I told my daughter Lily about you. She often asked, "Mommy, who is he that helped you like that?" And I told her, he was someone God sent to remind you that you are never alone. And if you want to be worthy of that, you have to do the same for others. Mr. Clint, you have created a circle of love that you yourself probably could not have imagined. I don't know why you chose to help me, but I believe that our meeting was not by chance. Perhaps God sent you as an answer to the prayers I prayed every night. Thank you not only for the material gift, but for the much greater spiritual gift. Thank you for seeing a person in despair and giving her hope to live, to believe. I pray that one day you will come back to this small town, and when that day comes, please stop by Sanders Bakery. I will save you the best apple pie, the one my mother used to make, and now I make it, with all my love and gratitude for you. Because you taught me something that I will teach my daughter. Kindness can change a life. Forever grateful. Emma Sanders. Emma put down her pen, sighed, feeling relieved, as if she had just let go of a heavy burden. Lily ran to hug her mother, kissed her cheek gently. "Mom, why are you crying?" Emma smiled through her tears, hugged her child. "I'm crying because I'm happy, my love." The next day, when the winter wind blew stronger, the shop was still lit, and every customer who entered felt the warmth from Emma's smile, from the crispy apple pie, and from the stories full of love. Perhaps they did not know that, behind each pie was a story of kindness, of faith, and of a miracle that a man had left for a young mother years ago. In the corner of the wall, Emma placed a small photo frame in which was written, "Always believe that an act of kindness, no matter how small, can change someone's life." And under that photo frame was her handwritten message. Thank you, Clint. Perhaps through this story we can realize that sometimes a simple act of kindness can save a broken soul. You may not be a famous star like Clint Eastwood, but you can absolutely be a miracle in someone's life. Listen, see those who are silently struggling every day, and remember, the kindness you give will eventually come back to you in ways you never expected. In a time when division, anger, and uncertainty are sweeping the world, this story is a reminder that we need safe spaces to talk about our truths. We need people brave enough to start the healing conversation, like Lily did. And we need to remember that everyone, from the powerful Donald Trump to the small girl Lily, has wounds and needs to be loved and heard. Dear friends, let this story be a mirror to reflect on your own life. Be brave to open your heart. Ask yourself the biggest question: am I living true to myself? Do I dare to believe in the good in the midst of pain? And have I ever sat down to listen to anyone's pain? If you find this story inspiring, please like and comment your feelings. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue watching meaningful and humane stories. And if you believe in the power of kindness, please share this video to spread the message. Everyone deserves to be seen and loved.